Okay, so when you think of the Bee Gees, your mind probably jumps straight to white suits, high voices, and disco balls, right? But their story is so much bigger than just one era. It's this epic saga that spans decades, with these unbelievable highs, crushing lows, and this incredible, almost stubborn talent for survival. So let's dive into this masterclass in creative reinvention. First off, let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about here. 250 million records sold. That is an insane number. It puts them in the same stratosphere as, the Beatles and Michael Jackson. But as you're about to see, their path was anything but a straight line to the top. This quote right here, it's basically the key to their entire story. Their career wasn't this steady, easy climb. No, it was this series of brilliant, phoenix from the ashes comebacks. They would hit the absolute peak, become the biggest thing in the world, only to fall into total obscurity. And then somehow, against all odds, find a way to reinvent themselves and do it all over again. It's a wild story of artistic survival. All right, so here's how we're going to break down this incredible journey. We'll start with their first taste of pop stardom and how it all fell apart. Then we'll get into the whole disco inferno that made them global icons. After that, we'll look at the brutal backlash that followed and their genius move to become behind-the-scenes hitmakers. And finally, we'll look at their lasting legacy. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. This is the first cycle, the one that took them from being just kids in Manchester to pop royalty, and then right back down to the brink of being completely forgotten. So believe it or not, their whole career basically started by accident. They're at a local talent show ready to lip sync to a record, but on the way to the stage, they drop it and it shatters. So they had no choice but to sing live. And for the first time, people heard that incredible 3-part harmony. That one moment put them on a path from Australia, where they really learned their craft, all the way to London and into the office of the legendary manager Robert Stigwood. And boom, just like that, they were superstars. But hold on, this is not the Bee Gees of Saturday Night Fever, not even close. This was their Baroque pop era. Think lush, sweeping orchestras and these incredibly beautiful, almost heartbreaking melodies. With huge hits like Massachusetts, they were the toast of the late 60s. People were even comparing them to the Beatles for their songwriting. But you know how it goes. With that kind of success comes some serious pressure. And while they were making this really ambitious double album called Odessa, all that sibling rivalry just boiled over. It all came down to a fight over which song would be the A-side single, Barry's or Robin's. When Robin lost that argument, he just up and quit the band, right at the peak of their fame. They did eventually get back together, but the magic just wasn't there anymore. The music world had moved on. You had grittier rock, singer-songwriters, and their polished pop sound just felt like a relic, like yesterday's news. The same band that was filling stadiums was now playing on the cabaret circuit. It was a shocking fall from grace. It really seemed like the Bee Gees story was over. But then came the first great rebirth. Their manager had a wild idea. Pack up, move to Miami, and start working with an R&B producer named R.F. Martin. This one move, well, it would change absolutely everything. And this is where the lightning strikes. They're in the studio, and the producer, Arif Martin, he just asked Barry to, scream a little in the background of a track, something high-pitched. And what came out was that falsetto. The iconic sound that didn't just become their new signature, it would literally define the entire sound of the disco era. Just a moment of pure, unexpected genius. And the creative improvisation didn't stop there. Get this. While they're recording the soundtrack for some little movie called Saturday Night Fever, their drummer has a family emergency and has to fly home, so they're stuck. What do? The engineers literally took 2 bars of a drum track, copied it, sliced the tape into this giant 20-foot loop that they draped over mic stands in the studio, and created one of the most famous beats in the history of music. So, what was the results of all this crazy innovation? A cultural explosion. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack wasn't just a hit record, it was a juggernaut that took over the world. It sat at #1 on the charts for an unbelievable 24 weeks straight. The Bee Gees weren't just back, they were the undisputed biggest band on the planet. It felt like their reign would never, ever end. But hey, in pop music, what goes up? Well, it's got to come down. And for the Bee Gees, the fall from that disco summit was as fast as it was brutal. And this brings us to the second major cycle of their career, the backlash, and yet another incredible reinvention. I mean, just look at this contrast. It is staggering.
One year, they are the absolute kings of music, winning Grammys, setting trends. The very next year, they are public enemy number one. That infamous disco demolition night where a DJ blew up a crate of disco records in the middle of a baseball field, that was the turning point. All of a sudden, disco sucked, and the Bee Gees, as the genre's biggest stars, became the main targets. Radio stations banned their music. Their careers were in a nosedive. And as if things weren't bad enough, at the exact same time the public was turning on them, they get locked into this massive $200 million lawsuit with their own manager over royalties. It completely paralyzed their career. I mean, they were being attacked from all sides. Their name had become totally toxic. So what do you do when the world decides it hates your voice? Well, you let other voices sing your songs. And this was the Bee Gees' most brilliant move yet. They just disappeared from the spotlight and became this secret weapon, a ghostwriting empire behind some of the biggest hits of the 1980s. For Barbra Streisand, Dionne Warwick, Kenny and Dolly, they proved their genius wasn't just in their performance, it was in their DNA, their uncanny ability to write a perfect pop song for anyone. And that incredible songwriting talent? Well, it eventually brought them back into the spotlight themselves. And that led to their final act as a band. A time when they finally cemented their legacy, but also had to face just immense personal tragedy. You know, eventually the world came around. That whole disco backlash thing just faded into the rearview mirror, and people started to appreciate the Bee Gees' entire body of work for the masterpiece it was. And the accolades, so long overdue, finally started pouring in. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, even a knighthood for Barry. Their legacy, once so controversial, was finally, and rightly, cemented in history. But this final chapter was also just filled with so much heartbreak. Maurice, who everyone called the musical and emotional glue of the group, he died so suddenly in 2003. And then when Robin passed away in 2012, the story of the Bee Gees as a trio of brothers came to an end, leaving Barry as the last man standing. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one last number, 103 beats per minute. What could that possibly be? Well, it's the tempo of staying alive, and it just so happens to be the absolute perfect rhythm for performing chest compressions in CPR. That ingenious drum loop, born out of desperation in a French studio, has gone on to be used in medical training all over the world to literally help people stay alive. What an incredible and totally unintended legacy. And that really brings us to the core question of their whole story, doesn't it? What is the true measure of a legacy? Is it that one fleeting moment at the peak of fame? Or is it the resilience to endure, to be written off, to be hated, and to rise from the ashes to create something timeless? Not just once, but over and over and over again.